and administration capacity of the institutions. This is a preparation for the business to work. Many times people say, I am following a bioeconomy project and it's not moving forward. These projects need to be prepared. And the funds have this capacity and this objective of eliminating the access bottlenecks. And the banks like BNDES and the IDB are the ones that can enter with the funding mechanisms to scale up those bioeconomy projects. I hope that they can create credit mechanisms for bioeconomy like they did for the agribusiness. That was very well done, and they could scale up those projects in Brazil. The credit mechanisms for agribusiness, they can now focus on bioeconomy. Today, it is very common to say that those projects are very risky. It is true. That is why we need to create the conditions for them to be effective. But I think the higher risks are the social and environmental risks of not implementing bioeconomy mechanisms. Thank you very much. Lots of risks to be approached. Now I'd like to pass the floor to you. How can a fund that comes from agribusiness look at this forest differently? I'd like you to tell us a little bit about the power of this relationship. Thank you, Carolina. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a huge pleasure to be here, and we were listening to the secretaries mentioning this. We are very happy. We from the JBS Fund, we are very happy to see this combination of efforts. As Rosa said, nothing is ready. We have to build it. So I'm going to talk about the axis where the fund is working. I think there's a huge convergence on this plan of bioeconomy. The fund started 2 years ago in September 2020. We have invested 60 million reais in less than 2 years. We have 18 low-carbon projects, 15,500 families supported. This area of the projects involved 5 million hectares, 50 organizations that work with low-carbon projects, and 100 indigenous communities. So looking at what is done, there are many lessons learned in the first 2 years, and what Rosa mentioned is very interesting. We structured some projects so that they could start with the help of the private initiative. The fund is focused on recovering the areas that were not preserved and the conservation of the forest. And within the conservation of the forest, we think that bioeconomy is an important leverage. The fund chose to work with 3 axes. Mauro, it's very in line with what you said. We have the axis of science and technology, where we're looking at bioproducts and technologies that are focused on mobility, connectivity, and energy. Without those structuring issues, we cannot start projects and generate businesses. So we have bioproducts within science and technology, and those structuring matters. We're going to work with production chains, especially low-carbon cattle raising and agroforest systems. And in bioeconomy, we want to identify and generate businesses. We're going to work with grants and mentorships and investments. And the private initiative has something to add, bringing this mentorship, bringing this business experience to the Amazon businesses. When we talk about bioeconomy, I can mention a few projects that we have supported. One of them is a startup accelerated from the AMAS fund. We are investing already in 6 businesses, and our commitment is to invest in other 6 businesses throughout 5 years. The second business is Amazon em Casa, Amazon at Home. We started supporting it as mentorships. 34 small businesses in Amazon that want to take their business to the Southeast. And their biggest difficulty was taking the business to the market. Manioca is one of the companies that we support that was able to sell their products easily in the Amazon region, in Pará specifically, but they want to take their product to the Southeast. We had a workshop with them, we did a mentorship program, and now we're doing a consultancy program that we call Go to Market, helping them to take their product to the Southeast and South markets. We have a third project ongoing that we are supporting a cooperative, RECA, from Rondônia, assessing all of the opportunities that they have in their business, looking at the product sales and the production chain, and we're helping them with professionals to improve their industrial manners, productivity, product design, and product to market. And when we look at science and technology, something that is very important in structuring for bioeconomy is a project that we are working on, bioproducts with GFI. It's a research within 5 chains in the Amazon so that we can find important ingredients for the food chain to transform them in added value products that will bring social inclusion, biodiversity, and another project that we have is in circular economy and waste management, which is the use of waste to create packages. We have this product with WPT and some universities. And the last project that is very recent, but we are here giving it to you in firsthand, is the connectivity project. We're supporting a pilot, and Tássio Azevedo is leading it. Tássio Azevedo is around here. It's a coincidence. He's walking by. He is going to run this program with CONAB, COIAC, and CMS. We have other investors, JBS, Arapiaú, Santander, and IX. And in this pilot, we're going to validate technology, and we have other 30 communities. Right now, we are transporting the batteries via trucks because they cannot be transported via planes. And next year, we're going to implement that in 1,000 communities. Until 2025, we're going to have over 4,000 communities covered by Starlink. This is going to be a big enabler for bioeconomy. I'm very happy because we have a lot to do, but I think we're now having a great convergence in many, many sectors with a lot of support and with the consortium that we have worked with for a long time.
Obrigada. Antes de passar
Thank you very much. And before we pass the floor to the audience, I'm going to pass the floor to Roberto Vac from Arapiaú. All of this effort of articulation among different philanthropies and different sectors of the society, specifically from the south of the country, how can we help taking bioeconomy from the papers and putting it into reality? It's very important to be here. Thank you very much. I think the topic of bioeconomy has several different faces of this cube. As we've said here, one of them is the risk reduction. Philanthropy has a very interesting role in risk reduction. We see blended finance as a very important alternative for the development of bioeconomy. The project that Joanita mentioned has this characteristic of an association between the philanthropy and the organizations that work closely to the private sector with the communities to provide something that for us is paramount, which is the need for an integrated agenda. For the 4.0 bioeconomy that is so developed and so mentioned by Carlos Nobre, for example, to flourish. And this flourishing depends on a transition that we are calling bioeconomy 1.0, and the bioeconomy 1.0 depends on structuring actions. There is risk mitigation, but risk mitigation has to be combined with other structuring elements. We need an integrated agenda for Amazon that takes into consideration these 1.0 demands, going through issues like education, health, infrastructure, connectivity, one of the key elements, science and technology. There are many elements that compose the Amazon agenda so that the bioeconomy business environment can flourish. In our standpoint, philanthropy has an important role, not only in the risk reduction for specific projects, but also in the set of structuring actions for the strategic integration that we need in the Amazon. The coalition, HAPS, they are movements that work together, mobilizing several actors of the civil society, the private sector, the academia, the government, the national and the subnational governments, so that we can provide the basic conditions for the bioeconomy as a whole. Thank you very much, Vaki. I think you mentioned some elements that can only lead me to BNDES. Thank you for being here with us, Julio. In terms of building the structuring conditions to reduce the risk, and then the other banks and the larger partners can join, Vaki also mentioned blended finance. BNDES embraced the agenda of bioeconomy as part of an agenda for the development of this economic development in the country. I would like to hear from you. How do you see a bank the size of BNDES helping flourish bioeconomy in the region with the help of the other institutions that are here? Thank you, Carol, for the invitation. I would like to greet all of our friends here at the round table. First, I would like to say that for the bank, as you said, the bank is very, very big. And what is the role of a bank? Connecting investors with those who need resources. A development bank is very similar. Searching for resources, not only resources for direct investment, but philanthropy, concessionary resources, and connecting those resources to projects that need additional support. Blended finances are exactly that. The bank launched the call, our first call. We received over 50 projects. We separated 90 million. Those projects demanded 1 billion of investment. We don't have all of that resource. Those resources were related to bioeconomy and circular economy. BNDES has a long journey in the Amazon territory in different instruments. The Amazon Fund probably was the most intensive and the most long-lasting project that we had over there. What we tried to do 2 years ago was a big Amazon agenda. And this big Amazon agenda was divided into a few axes, 6 axes, actually. The part of infrastructure was one of them, logistics was another one, energy, connectivity, as Roberto said. So we're focusing on instruments for connectivity. The other axis was credit. We know that the amount of credit operated by banks is a lot smaller than the GDP of that region. probably this year or the beginning of next year, we're going to launch Garante Amazônia, which is a big guarantee fund for the Amazon. And the other fund is bioeconomy. Inside bioeconomy, we have four other projects. The other inside those four projects, we have a reforestation project. We did a public selection and Fumbio was selected. We hoped to capture 200 million in 1 year. In 6 months, we collected 700 million. From these 700 million, 200 million belong to the bank. That was one of the programs. The other program is the blended finance program. We are going to support up to 4 projects of bioeconomy, and we are in this process of selection now. Besides the blended finance, we have a big program involving other areas of the bank for concession of parks and forests for the federal government and for state governments. This is around 18 million hectares, and a relevant part of this is in the Amazon region. So you can see that there are different types of instruments where we can allocate resources to streamline the allocation of resources to different projects. This is what we are working on, and that potentializes public policies. When we see that there is a bottleneck in a certain public policy, we can allocate resources to that public policy. Thank you very much, Julio. I'm going to listen from the secretaries later about the bottlenecks from your standpoint. From the creation, I want to listen about the creation of the structure for your public policies from your standpoint. You are running the Amazon community of IDB from Washington. So how do you think that the foreigners can understand the Amazon, the foreigners from inside and from outside the country? I hope that I can be as brief as you were because I speak a lot. I'm going to start telling something that I think it's important. When we talk about bioeconomy, above all, bioeconomy is a dispute of narrative. So what are we talking about again? As a dispute of narrative, we built a definition of bioeconomy that I use until today. We launched a technical note about bioeconomy, and I continue with that note in IDB. We distinguish bioeconomy from biodiversity. We use this bioeconomy for the traditional peoples. It's a world, the traditional populations is a world where the time is different. Biodiversity has to do with the culture and the cosmology of the space. This bioeconomy has to have a very distinct type of planning and a different type of financing.
The second scale is that the imperfect market bioeconomy. When we don't have the knowledge about the market structure, and the state or someone from the outside many times are not able to intervene. So there are historical debts with the aviators. It's a bioeconomy that exists in the forest with the raw product, and we are not able to see this market. And the third bioeconomy is the commodity bioeconomy, including in the Amazon, and it should include the cattle raising, how we are going to transform agriculture into something biosustainable, the acai production. This is putting pressure in other bioeconomies in this dispute towards the land, violence in the fields, and so on. And we also have the bioeconomy of perspection that is connected to the previous one. Having seen all that, the IDB is launching the Amazon initiative, and we launched last year. It's a demand from the cooperative countries because IDB is a cooperative bank, so the governors are and their ministers of finance is not a bank that has that whose decision is coming from outside, but it's coming from the inside. And the 8 cooperatives have demanded the implementation of the Amazon program, because we observe the states and we don't observe the Amazon and not the pan-Amazon. So within this territory, we have different scales. One thing is the pan-Amazonic region, and the other is the Amazon within each country. And we also have the micro regions within each state. In the Brazilian case, has a different reality with this strong regional perspective. So we have the Amazon unit with 4 axes. Bioeconomy is the first, and then we see bioeconomy, and Mauro and Eduardo, whom I know well, we see bioeconomy as this territorial governance, because we must make business happen, but in the same ways, we also must have this land governance, and this is a mechanism for this land mechanism. So the 3 scales in different territories must be seen as land governance, and we have this kind of understanding. So the other axis is cattle and sustainable agriculture, and we also have cities and infrastructure. It's not possible to have bioeconomy with bad water and terrible communication. So the development bank is working with this topic for the Amazon. And the fourth that is very important to me is human capital. I was listening from Mauro speaking about that, and if you know me, you are aware that I believe that if you don't have our human capital, our traditional communities, our researchers strengthened, we shouldn't, it's not enough to plan because it won't work. And during the COVID, the borders were helping us organizing the food distribution and so on. And this is a key mechanism for changing the mindset toward the new generations and so on. So 3 of these crossing axes are the institutional strengthening in Brazil with a strong work with the state governors. So I invite you all, because on Thursday we are going to launch this very interesting program with the government of Pará, a program with this loan based on legislation change. So the idea of IDB is to work in a structuring way with the governance. And we also have gender and diversity in the agenda, and climate change and preservation of the forest. And the IDB with the Amazon initiative has 3 funds: an ordinary capital fund, a DCF fund, a fund for bioeconomy, especially for the investment in banks at the second level. Very important. If it's not the IDB taking this risk and saying that it's going to transform BASA, who is going to do that? So we must have credit lines working with the banks at second level, and each country is different. We can talk about Suriname, about the Brazilian Amazon, but they are different worlds. But we must prepare the banks to have credits for bioeconomy and this multi-country fund, which is also working with greater aspects. So IDB is working by strengthening the other units and sectors in the bank so that the projects that the bank is developing in the Amazon has more knowledge about the land with greater impact so that the countries, and we are talking about the federal government as well, so the countries can have the interest to invest in the Amazon region. And sometimes it's harder because we have less vote there, less votes. So it's important to have an attraction for the country to invest. So IDB is organized. And the last comment is that it's the single development bank that has a unit in the Amazon. So it's very important that we have that in this perspective, and we are partners. Thank you, Tatiana. Uh, you talked about transforming risk into opportunities, and everyone here talked about the efforts of from different institutions for that. I would like to the Secretary Eduardo Taveira to reflect upon what was said. Thank you. I'd like to thank for the invitation, and you've called me for a different panel. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank you for your presence, our colleague and secretaries who are presenting. And I thought it was very interesting to listen from the funders, because I believe that somehow everyone is understanding a part of the problem. But on the other hand, we have this huge challenge as states, because we notice that everybody knows what are the different points we must work with, but at the end, where the state must address it, transforming into public policy, as Tatiana, the representative of the IDB said, Tatiana Shore, we don't have this effective ability in the northern region to overcome all the bureaucracy so that these resources are going to the ground. So the bureaucracy challenge is huge. I was talking to Manuel because we understand that both the funders and the bank have criteria for those who are lending and for those who are receiving the money concerning transparency and application of resources. And many times it's hard to get three quotations to hire a pilot, this boat pilot to take someone to the community. So it's complicated when the car is broken in the field, that uh, you have to remove the car because the single workshop that can fix the car is in the capital, in Manaus. So we must solve concrete problems in the Amazon, and it's hard for us to overcome the demandings of the funders for this reality in the Amazon, which we deal with in our daily lives. Not talking about human resources, it's a whole other story, but the bureaucracy is the reality in the Amazon. So how to revert this issue? Thank you, Paulo. Thank you so much, Secretary. I'll give the floor to Paula from Acre for her final remarks about the panel. Thank you. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Taveira summarized our reality. We had an execution from the IDB that took many years in the state, exactly because we have this kind of bottlenecks, not only concerning people, but peculiarities of our states. We have places where we are only able to access through boat or plane. There's no other way. And if the the river is dry, you cannot even reach by boat. To make the public policy reach this place, it's a lot of red tape. In each project execution, we are more experienced. This is a fact. And with the help of the funds, is even easier, because many times, if it were for the state to execute directly the values, it would be even harder for us. So it helps a lot to have this interface with the funds. But we suffer a lot. We know our pains concerning personnel as well, mainly because the technical ability that the states have is very small. So we should invest in third-party personnel, and at the end we put our technical ability over them, and then we have to finalize a project, and at the end we have to change all the staff, and we don't have a continuity. And we have to think about that because our own sources are very scarce. And when we start listing priorities in the state, the environment, as much as it has crossing um, issues with education, healthcare, economy, we are always forgotten, because healthcare comes first, education comes first, and we don't get our share. We are always the third or the fourth when dividing the different shares. So we don't have a continuous investment. This is something that we must think about, because it's one of the main bottlenecks in the states. This lack of technical capacity that is ongoing, so that the projects can be uh, executed better and better within the states. Thank you, Secretary. So I'd like to wrap up now. I'd like to thank you for your participation. We hope that from this dialogue we can exchange even more, so that this bioeconomy can be practiced faster, so that the red tape can be eliminated. This is a distinct reality from the rest of the country. So we need these opportunities for the Brazilians there. So I'd like to thank you all on behalf of the Legal Amazon Consortium. And I'd like to say that within WRI Brazil, we are supporting the Legal Amazon Consortium because we believe the biodiversity is possible and a new economy for the Amazon is possible. So we hope to build this bioeconomy together. Thank you.